I suppose with this being the 4-year anniversary, I should tell the story I tell to all who listen each year. I promise you, every word spoken here is completely true, though it may seem slightly impossible to imagine. I will describe every detail I can. This is the story of how I committed my first large crime and got away with it. It was June 1st, 2010, when my wife divorced me. She took with her all of my kids and all of my money. I was left homeless. The day after, June 2nd, a buddy called me. He told me he was low on money himself and that he needed some help. Upon explaining my financial situation to him, he called our other pal. The other pal, Michael, was never very rich. He couldn't support both of us due to his lack of money himself. So the three of us put our heads together and came up with an idea. We'd rob a bank. Michael happened to be big on guns and owned numerous weapons, which might explain his lack of money. Anyway, we had spent the next 4 nights hatching a plan to rob this bank. 3 mid-20 guys aren't exactly fit to rob a somewhat heavily secured bank. We bought masks first. Clowns was the theme we went with, and then ammo. Luckily, my first friend, who I'll call Alan from here on, already rode around in a cheap van, which was perfect for our getaway vehicle. Michael pulled some strings, did some intimidating, and got someone to investigate cameras and patrol patterns under the guise of an exterminator. After we mapped that out, it was time to go. June 6th, 2010, 9 p.m. We pull into the garage of the bank where a few guards sit, loitering about. Michael takes one by surprise, telling the other 2 to get down or he would shoot their friend. They did as told, throwing their weapons toward us. We zip-tied their hands and moved into the building, masks on at this point. I remember those masks being really stuffy and hot. We moved quietly, threading our way around guards and cameras. I remember Alan tripping up at one point, almost causing a guard to come find us. In the end, we made it to the safe we were trying to get into. Alan cracked it and we got the money. This was when things got unusual. We had the money in duffel bags tied to our backs and we were making our way out when a guard saw us. He had pulled his gun on us and nearby guards did the same. They didn't take any chances. They shot Alan first, and I remember the blood flying from his right shoulder onto the wall in an artistic pattern. Then they hit Michael in the chest. The blood from that wound hit the carpet, staining it. I had begun to shoot back at this point and almost made it behind a wall when a bullet hit me, square in the forehead. I remember the sharp pain entering my skull and piercing every other sense I had. It only lasted for about 5 seconds, then I felt nothing. I got up and peeked out from the wall. The guards were all standing completely still, frozen mid-motion. Alan had gotten up at this point too, along with Michael. They said they didn't feel a thing, though the blood was still pouring from their wounds. Alan walked up to the guard and touched his shoulder. Nothing. So he grabbed the money and ran. Upon leaving, I felt a sharp pain in my skull and recoiled in pain. Right as we left the perimeter of the building, Alan and Michael both screamed in pain as well, and almost crashed the car. The pain lasted for 5 seconds, again. We got home, hid the money, and went to sleep. When we awoke, the money was gone. We had all started to scream at each other for taking the cash. I remember the shock when we didn't see a thing about it on the news in the morning. I remember driving by the bank that we had just been shot at the night before and seeing nothing but empty space where the wood structure of an instruction building sat. I remember asking everyone if there had been a bank there, only to be told no. But what I specifically remember is the pain that entered my skull and the scar that sits there, perfectly matching the pattern of a bullet wound.
Number 2.
It was 2010 when Hurricane Sandy hit the northeastern United States. New York City was fixated on a dangling crane in Midtown Manhattan. Weird stories and photos circulated the internet and social media. Most notably, a picture of a shark on the flooded front lawn of a New Jersey home. One of the more disturbing pictures I saw was of a casket floating down an empty street. I have searched high and low for a copy of that photo, more to prove my story than anything. Caskets floating away during a flood aren't a new thing, believe it or not. In New Orleans, the problem of airtight coffins popping out of the ground because of heavy rainfall became so bad, most graves are now either lined with concrete or built above ground. Before Sandy, this phenomenon was unheard of in the state of Connecticut. I never saw it personally, mind you. I just saw the picture I mentioned and a few stories from patrons at the bar I used to work at. Problem is, drunks aren't exactly known for their honest storytelling. The story I'm telling you took place the day after the hurricane. The bar I work at is located on the outskirts of Waterbury, Connecticut. My boss called me and asked if I could go check out the place and make sure it hadn't taken too much damage or been looted. I said I would on the condition that I could drink for free when I got there. He agreed, but he didn't have much choice as he was flooded in his apartment. And I was in my truck and on my way, figuring I'd spend my afternoon relaxing at an empty bar. There's something creepy about a city the day after a storm. Major roadways are abandoned, street lights are out. One major intersection I had to go through simply had a stop sign stuck in a Home Depot bucket in the middle of the road instead of its usual working stoplight. The power was out, so most of the houses I passed were pitch black. Pure silence with the exception of my truck's engine and the country station I was listening to. Only one word came to mind at that moment: apocalyptic. I pulled into the strip mall where the bar was located. I locked up and moved towards the glass front door. The neon sign outside had been broken in the storm. McKinley's Gin Mill was written in hunter green Gothic type on yellowing plastic. The break in the sign was in the top left corner where an Irish caricature grinning over a mug of beer could be seen. With the top left part of his head missing, the single remaining eye made his smile seem more sinister than sarcastic. I opened up and flipped the switch. The lights stayed off. Power's out, sign's broken, but I couldn't see any other damage. I grabbed a green Jameson bottle along with a portable iPod player we kept under the bar and made my way into the adjoining room. The way McKinley's was set up was as soon as you walk through the front door, you're in the bar room. The room had wood paneling and was decorated with photos, posters, and signs scattered on the walls. Across from the bar was a 5-foot gap in the wall that led to an area with a big screen TV, pool table, jukebox, and a few tables. I put the bottle on one of the tables and set up my iPod. I enjoy solitude for the most part, and the idea of drinking a bottle of Irish and listening to music while improving my pool game was a welcome compared to how I usually spend my nights. Noisy 20-somethings taking Instagram pictures and comparing how drunk they are. I put my chill out playlist on and set up the table. I was maybe halfway through my second game when I heard the bell over the front door tingle. I put down the pool cue to the sound of a scraping stool. I walked back into the barroom and saw the man's back. "You got a drink, friend?" he asked in a sing-song voice. I made my way to the shelf with all the liquor bottles. The man was dressed odd compared to our usual clientele. He was wearing a dark black suit, like the guy had just gotten out of church. "What do you want?" I asked. He rapped his knuckles on the wood. "4 roses bourbon, 3 fingers neat if you don't mind." I reached up to the top shelf and grabbed the dust-covered bottle. I took a clean rocks glass from the bottom of the shelf before turning towards the man and pouring the drink. The man grabbed the glass and I looked up at him. That was the first time I got a real look at him. His suit wasn't Sunday best as I had originally thought. Patches of it had rotten away. It was covered in patches of mud, dirt, and pus yellow stains that shone past the black. The shirt underneath, which had once been white, was now a light brown, with the same sickly yellow blotches scattered about. But that wasn't the horrifying thing. His eyes were glazed over white, with the only evidence of pupils being putrid milk-colored dots. His skin was pulled tight against the skull like a pale cling film. The right side of his face didn't even have that much. The bottom of his right eyeball was visible past a half-rotten eyelid. Cheekbone, jaw, teeth were all visible. He sipped the whiskey, and brown liquor ran out through the gaps in his teeth. "Damn good stuff," he said with a half grin. I pulled back and the man gave a deep laugh. I know, I look a mess. I caught my reflection in a store window. Don't worry, I don't mean any kind of harm. To you, at least. I reached under the bar, my hand wrapped around a sawn-off baseball bat we kept close in case of robbery. If you use that bat, you better make sure your first hit is true, friend. I don't want to hurt you, but I will. Did he check under the bar when he walked in? Did he see the reflection in the mirror? He answered for me. When you're dead going on 60 years, you start to see things no one else does, he said while pointing at his half-exposed eye. The eye sees all, I'm afraid. I see your heart racing, I see the bat, I see you, Frank. My fingers tightened around the leather grip. He took another sip. I don't know how I know either. Please, let go of the bat. I just got out, and I would just like a bit of conversation. Grab a drink, pal, I'm buying. I let go of the bat and tried to feel the shelf behind me. I half swung my hand around until I felt fingers touch glass. I put another rocks glass on the bar top in front of me, not wanting to lose sight of the stranger. When a man with half a face who somehow knows your first name asks to have a drink with you, you have three options. Try and kill him, scream and run, or have a drink and hope for the best. I poured myself a bourbon and tried to avoid staring at his face. Go ahead and look, the man said. Before you ask, I don't know why I'm here. Well, not here. I'm here to have a drink and a conversation. Here, though, that's a surprise. Woke up staring at silk, clawed at it, screamed, don't know for how long. Could have been a day, could have been 60 years. I didn't exactly have a calendar. All I know is the box I was in started to move. The wood was old enough that after a few hits I cracked it, ripped apart the top and made my way here. You can imagine it's been quite an interesting day for me. He chuckled. I drank deep and poured myself another. Is East Windsor Road still 3 blocks down? He asked. No, 3 blocks down is Kennedy Street, I responded. He looked confused. Kennedy Street? Who's Kennedy? I'm talking 3 blocks that way, he said while pointing behind himself with his thumb. Yeah, that's Kennedy Street, and that's Kennedy, I said while nodding towards a black and white photo of JFK we had hung on the wall by the mirror. Kennedy, What did he do? I responded to the 60-year dead man the same way I would a drunk patron. First Irish Catholic president. The man laughed. Irish Catholic. God, I would have loved to see that. What else? First female president? First black man? First atheist? I stared at him a moment. Hope he's not racist. We have a black president now. President Barack Obama. He laughed so hard he almost fell out of his chair. My God, a black man as a president. What a time, God. I have missed so much. He wrapped his fingers on the bar. You believe in fate, friend? I shook my head. Well, I do, he responded. At least I do now. 60 years in the earth, only me to keep me company. I know why too. My pretty wife, well, I guess pretty ex-wife, killed me. He shook his head. I knew that stew tasted funny. Anyway, my wife wanted to be with my friend Teddy. I knew at the time they were running around together. One night I go home and eat a nice cooked meal. Next thing I know, I'm clawing at the ceiling. He finished his bourbon. Dark brown trailed on yellowed bone through gritted teeth. I'll have my revenge. I'm going to walk down to Kennedy Street, go right up to my house, knock on the door and yell, "Honey, I'm home." And when I see her face, well, she won't be so pretty anymore. God, I hope Teddy's there too. He stood up. I'll pay you back, friend, when I get a chance. He turned around and walked out the door. As the bell above the door tingled, I fell to the ground shaking. I had finally composed myself a few hours later in the mid-afternoon. I locked up, texted my boss about the damage, and went home. I didn't sleep much, and I ended up calling out of work the next few days. But with a combination of sleep deprivation and repeating, it was a bad Halloween prank. I finally found the courage to go back. Then, a week after my return, I was opening up when I found an envelope shoved under the door. Inside was a newspaper clipping about an elderly couple who seems to have been ripped apart by an animal. Also, $9. Once I found out from the owner, a glass of 4 roses cost $3 when they first opened up in 1951. I quit and left the state of Connecticut for good.